two groups, the Herodians and the Pharisees. Now you guys on the left, you're going to be the Pharisees, okay? And the Pharisees don't like the Romans, okay? So after 3, you're going to say, boo to the Romans. Boo to the Romans. Okay, you ready? 1, 2, 3.
Boo to the Romans.
Yeah, that's the Pharisees. They do not like the Romans. This side, you're the Herodians. Now the Herodians, they like the Romans. So after 3, you're going to say, yippee for the Romans. Okay? 1, 2, 3.
Yippee for the Romans.
Brilliant. So let's have another practice, Pharisees.
Boo to the Romans.
Great. And Herodians?
Yippee to the Romans.
Brilliant. And what we read in the story is the Pharisees, they come to Jesus and they're trying to trap him. They're trying to trick him with a question. They want to get him in trouble. And the question is all about taxes. Now, if you don't know about taxes, you do know now. I'm not talking about the thing you get into to go somewhere. I'm talking about the money that you have to pay to the government. You saw that in the sketch, didn't you? When you earn money, when you get older, you children, you'll have to pay some taxes. And back in Jesus' day, people had to pay taxes to the Romans. Now, do you think the Pharisees liked paying taxes? No. Pharisees?
Boo to the Romans.
Do you think the Herodians were happy to pay taxes?
Yippee.
Yeah. Go on. Well, not quite yet, Ruth. No, sorry. Go on after 3.
Yippee.
Oh, after 3. No. 1, 2, 3.
Yippee.
Brilliant. Yeah, they didn't mind paying their taxes to the Romans. Now, the Pharisees didn't like Jesus, so they came up with this question to trap him. It was a kind of a trick question, really, because they thought whatever Jesus answered, he's going to be in trouble. He's either going to be in trouble with the Pharisees, or he's going to be in trouble with the Herodians. It was a mean question. It was a bit like getting someone out the front, taking them to a Liverpool versus Man United match, and getting them out the front into the middle of the stadium and saying, who do you want to win? Whatever the answer, that that it's not going to be, there's going to be people in that stadium that aren't happy. And so they say to Jesus, tell us then, what is your opinion? Is it right to pay taxes to Caesar or not? Now Jesus knew they were trying to set a trap for him. So he said to them, just get me a coin, will you? I think we may have a picture of a coin. There we go. Just get me a coin, will you? And they said, Jesus said, whose picture's on the coin? This is an old Roman coin. Whose picture's on the coin? Does anyone know who that is? Not Jesus, no. Good try, George. Caesar. Caesar, that's the emperor of the Roman Empire. If I took one of our coins out today, it would have the Queen on, wouldn't it? Because the Queen is our sovereign. And Jesus says, who's this picture of? Who's the image of? And they all say, it's Caesar. It's Caesar. And then Jesus speaks these amazing words. He says, give to Caesar what is Caesar's. Give to God's what is God's. So Jesus is saying, because it looks like Caesar, because he's got his face on it, give it to Caesar, pay your taxes. So that means Herodians are happy. And then he says, and we're going to need our thinking caps on here, maybe get them out again, go on, pop them back on. Thinking face. Okay, and he says, but give to God what is God's. So he's saying Caesar's, the coin has Caesar's face on, so give it to Caesar. Give to God's what is God's. That means whatever's in God's image, give that to God. That's strange, isn't it? Because we can't see God, can we? God is a spirit, so how do we know what his image is like? Well, in the first few verses of the Bible, or the first few chapters of the Bible, we learn a real lot about who God is. We learn that God made the world. He made the stars, he made the cats, he made the tiny spiders, he made the big elephants. God makes things. We also learn in the first few chapters of the Bible that God speaks. God speaks. He makes things by speaking words. He says, let there be light, and there was light. God speaks. So he makes things, he speaks, and we also learn that he rules. He's in charge. Things do what he says. He gives people names. He gives different places to different things that he's created. So where do we find God's image in his world? God makes things, he speaks, and he rules. What about the sun? Is the sun in God's image? Does the sun make things? Not really. It makes things grow, but he doesn't really make things. Does the sun speak? No, I've never heard the sun speaking. Does the sun rule? Sort of. It kind of rules the day, but not really. What about a dog? What about a dog? Does a dog make things? What does a dog make? A mess? Does a dog speak? Sort of. Not really, though. Does a dog rule? No. All sorts of answers. All sorts of answers. Not really. Here we go. Try this one. What about people? Do people make things? Yes. We make all sorts of things, don't we? Do people speak? Yes, people speak. We talk all the time. Some talk more than others. Some talk too much. We talk all the time. What about this? Do we rule? Yes, we do. We like to. Well, kings and queens rule, but all of us like to put things in order and have things in place and assign names to certain things. We love to rule. And the Bible says, do you know what? The Bible says we are made in God's image. Excellent. God's image. It says in Genesis chapter 1, so God created mankind in his own image. In the image of God, he created them. Male and female, he created them. Every person created has the imprint, the stamp, or the image of God upon them. That's majestic, isn't it? Made in the image of God. Now think about what Jesus said. Give to Caesar what is Caesar's, and give to God what is God's. Where do we find God's image? People. We are made in God's image. We were made to reflect God's likeness. There's a problem, though. We don't always live like we're made in God's image. We decide we don't want God to rule. We don't want to rule under him, listening to his word. We just want to do our own thing. We decide we don't want to listen to what God has spoken. We want to speak our own words, our own way. We decide we're going to live life on our own, and we reject the God who made us in his image. And that really messes things up. The Bible calls that sin, and sin leads to death. But we read in the Bible that Jesus, the eternal Son, the one who's always been with his Father, came down into this world, and he lived a life that shouted loud and clear, I am the image of God. Every time, we sang it in the song, he obeyed his Father perfectly. And then he died on the cross in our place, so that we can know God and live again for the purpose that he made us. And we've been learning, as I said earlier, that Jesus is the very best treasure. And I hope all you boys and girls this week have learned something new about Jesus and how good he is. And what this verse tells us is that now, because of what Jesus has done, we owe God everything. Give to God what is God's. We should live our lives for God. We are made in his image. Now, the people that heard Jesus' first answer, such a great answer, they were just amazed. They were blown over by Jesus' answer. And it left them with a question to face. Instead of arguments about money and power and whether they should pay their taxes, they were left with this question. And it was this: will they give to God what is God's? will they give themselves, made in God's image, back to God? That was the question that they were left with. Or would they keep shaking their fist at him and say, I'm going my own way? And this question, it faced those people 2,000 years ago, and it faces all of us this morning. It faces the children. Will we give to God what is God's? And it faces the grown-ups. Will we give to God what is God's? Now, I am going to read the whole story through, and then we're going to have a quiz. This is what we've done each week. We've had story time and then quiz time. So you need to listen real careful to the story as I read it straight from the Bible, and then you'll know the answers to the quiz. Here we go. Then the Pharisees went out and laid plans to trap him in his words. And they sent their disciples to him along with the Herodians. Teacher, they said, we know that you are a man of integrity and that you teach the way of God in accordance with the truth. You aren't swayed by men because you pay no attention to who they are. Tell us then, what is your opinion? Is it right to pay taxes to Caesar or not? But Jesus, knowing the evil intent of their evil intent, said, you hypocrites, why are you trying to trap me? Show me the coin used for paying the tax. They brought to him a denarius, and he asked them, whose portrait is it? Whose inscription? Caesar's, they replied. And then he said, give to Caesar what is Caesar's, and to God what is God's. And when they heard this, they were amazed. So they left him and went away. Right, quiz time.